Welcome to this explainer. I want you to think for a second about the digital landscape we live in every single day. We've been conditioned to view platforms like YouTube or our social media feeds as just entertainment, right? Just a casual place to kill time. But statistically, architecturally, that is a profound miscalculation. We are not looking at entertainment platforms. We are interfacing with planetary-scale behavioral influence systems, systems that are actively, algorithmically reshaping human behavior, culture, and ultimately our very identities.
And that reality brings us to a fundamental, honestly deeply unsettling question. Who controls your attention? Because attention, not money, is the ultimate currency of the modern age. We often forget that the real product of these systems isn't the video you're watching. The real product is you. Every single second you spend looking at a screen, a quiet transaction is taking place. Your attention is being harvested.
Let's dive right into Chapter 1, The Architecture of Attention and the Systemic Capture of the Mind.
To truly grasp this, we need to clinically break down exactly how this capture operates. At its core, the AI recommendation engine is an emotion harvesting machine. It doesn't just suggest content, it studies you. You might think you're casually searching for entertainment, but the algorithm is meticulously tracking exactly where you pause, what you replay, and exactly what makes you stay. You think you're making conscious choices about what to watch, but the AI is quietly mapping your emotional triggers, your insecurities, and your fears. When you think you're just killing time, the system is calculating your behavioral probabilities. It's studying our most subtle human inputs to learn our psychological vulnerabilities with absolute mathematical precision. And when you run that math at a global scale, it leads to a very specific systemic outcome. You see, the algorithm really only has one primary objective, and that's to keep your attention for as long as possible. And the data shows that outrage and fear spread exponentially faster than calm, nuanced discussion. Strong, visceral emotion maximizes watch time. Conflict keeps people glued to the screen. So over time, as this dynamic scales globally, algorithmic engagement becomes far more valuable to the system than objective truth.
Which brings us to Chapter 2, The Death of Silence, and the psychological toll of constant stimulation.
We really have to look inward here at the human toll this systemic capture takes on our emotional resilience. It leads directly to what's defined as attention addiction. This is a psychological dependency on continuous dopamine rewards. Think about it. The short videos, the endless scrolling, those highly emotional thumbnails, they literally train the human brain to seek constant stimulation. And when your brain perpetually adapts to that kind of speed and constant novelty, it fundamentally alters your cognitive performance. The result? We see shorter attention spans, deep emotional fatigue, and massively reduced patience. We're losing the cognitive ability to think deeply for long periods. Just plain silence, deep thought, and stillness. They're becoming increasingly unbearable for the modern human mind.
Moving on to Chapter 3, Digital Fathers, Lost Meaning, and How We Are Outsourcing Identity in the Internet Age.
When we zoom out to the macro societal impact, we see something unprecedented. Global platforms have quietly become the largest, most pervasive education systems in human history. They are fundamentally altering how culture itself is transmitted. Millions of young people right now are outsourcing their entire search for meaning. They are learning about complex concepts like masculinity, femininity, religion, relationships, and their very personal identities from online influencers. Instead of turning to real-world mentors, parents, or community elders, they're turning to digital father figures. And while sure, some creators do guide people positively, many simply manipulate that immense loneliness and anger for influence and profit. A teenager today, whether they're in Nairobi, Jakarta, or Cairo, is often shaped much more by these global algorithmic trends than by their own local, physical culture.
And this is critical because, biologically speaking, isolation destroys humans faster than hunger. We are evolutionarily wired as social creatures. Deep research into survival psychology proves that prolonged loneliness actually physically damages our cognition and emotional stability. These platforms weaponize that exact biological vulnerability to isolation. They step in and substitute genuine, messy, real-world human connection with flawless parasocial manipulation.
Let's explore Chapter 4, Comfort and Psychological Collapse, the Paradox of Modern Survival.
To understand why we're so vulnerable to the system, we have to contrast our modern environment with our evolutionary history. Human beings evolved through hunting, facing extreme elements, and mastering delayed gratification. We didn't evolve for instant digital escape. Historically, survival was purely physical. It meant overcoming literal pain, fear, and nature. But today, the battlefield has entirely shifted. Modern men and women are facing a battle of psychological survival. This new survival requires overcoming meaningless comfort, nihilism, and endless digital overstimulation. Paradoxically, modern comfort actively weakens our mental endurance. By instantly removing almost all friction and discomfort from our daily lives, we strip away the necessity for discipline. We end up collapsing psychologically long before physical hardship ever even appears.
This perfectly aligns with core insights from survival psychology. Humans do not survive because they are physically strong, they survive because they create psychological structure inside chaos. If you think of Viktor Frankl in Man's Search for Meaning or survivalists stranded at sea for months, they survived because they created daily routines, imaginary companionship, and a deep sense of mission. They use different methods, but the exact same mechanism. The mind collapses without structure, and modern algorithms are actively designed to erode that internal structure, replacing it with chaotic, endless distraction.
We can actually categorize the behavioral science behind this as the energy paradox. Your brain absolutely hates uncertainty, and it has an evolutionary drive to conserve energy by avoiding discomfort at all costs. Under stress, the human brain tries to reduce suffering as quickly as possible. So quitting or just scrolling for an easy dopamine hit feels completely logical to a stressed brain. But in the modern world, this ancient evolutionary instinct leads directly to nihilism, distraction, and fragility. Modern success actually requires actively enduring the discomfort of ignoring those short-term digital rewards.
Exactly, because motivation is really just a mood, and moods fade quickly. Identity, however, remains when motivation fades. True resilience is born from identity, seeing yourself as a person with a distinct, unshakable purpose. Scientifically speaking, meaning biologically changes your pain tolerance. People can outlast seemingly impossible physical odds if they truly believe their suffering has a purpose. The strongest, most lasting behavioral change happens when your identity changes, not when you stumble upon a momentary burst of motivation.
This brings us to Chapter 5, The Danger of Repetition and How Minds Actually Break. When we look closely at how extreme ideologies are formed over time, it almost always comes down to one simple thing: repetition. Minds do not break during one heroic, cinematic catastrophe. That's a myth. Minds break during thousands of meaningless, hopeless, repetitive days. Thousands of days of endless scrolling, subtle uncertainty, and quiet isolation. That is what slowly dismantles the human mind. Analytically, we can track this dismantling process in 3 precise steps. First, you have daily algorithmic conditioning. Second, the formation of heavily insulated digital echo chambers. And finally, unquestioned fanaticism and loyalty. Through the sheer brute force of repetition, the algorithm acts as an incubator for internet cults and political extremism. It feeds you a slightly more extreme version of your own pre-existing biases, day after day, year after year. And it alters your worldview and identity without you ever consciously realizing it's happening.
Which leads us to our final section. Chapter 6, The Battle for Consciousness. A final warning.
When we combine the analytical reality of these AI systems with the psychological reality of human fragility, we arrive at a very stark final warning. The central question of our era is no longer who has information. We all have infinite information right in our pockets. The real question is, who controls the flow of attention? Because whoever controls the algorithm ultimately controls culture. Whoever controls culture controls society. And whoever controls these massive digital systems possesses the unprecedented power to influence how entire future generations perceive reality itself. Survival is rarely one heroic moment. It's usually thousands of ordinary decisions repeated under pressure. The greatest battle of the modern age may not be fought over land or resources, but over human attention, perception, and the ability to remain conscious in a world designed to constantly capture the mind. Take a moment to really let that sink in. Thank you for joining us for this explainer.